The Afternoon Show is a safe space for men and masculine types to express their feelings and their emotions. Each month, we'll gather and come together for a live discussion to acknowledge and heal old wounds, trauma, stereotypes, and much more. We hope to make a positive impact in the hearts and minds of all who listen. So thanks for tuning in to Afternoons with the Dudes. Hello. Thank you everybody for joining us for Afternoons with the Dudes. It's been a really wonderful opportunity for us to come together as masculine human beings to go through life, to learn, to open up space for each other, to really dive deep into what we're feeling, into what we're healing, etc., etc. So for anybody who wasn't there for the episode 2, or if you didn't listen to it, I'll give you a little recap. We were talking about trauma. We were talking about healing trauma. A lot of beautiful things were said. We had Brent with us. We had Roots with us. And some of the things that were brought up was that being more authentic in the present awareness within yourself. It's really powerful for acknowledging and beginning the healing process of trauma. They also said that as a team, we can support anyone when we are focused on our present awareness. So authenticity and presence were really big. Also, I remember Brent said recognizing, hey, this is what I'm feeling or thinking, no matter what it is. Just recognizing that can help us to begin to move forward, to heal. So I know, Joe, you were not part of that episode, but what were your thoughts on these last things that people had said? If you want to unmute yourself and let us know.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Joseph Anthony Marlowe, and what I have to say about that is a very wonderful thing that I practice a lot in my work with clients, is becoming, in some sense, really genuine in the way that we work with our emotions, allowing yourself to have all of our emotions there and recognizing that is a holistic part of ourselves, because it's in some sense that I've seen that a lot of people sort of, or at least men in general, sort of like, kind of denote their emotions. They denote those yucky feelings, or denote the feelings that are undesirable or unpleasurable, as I say. And I find that, when one practices that, it sort of is like, pushing away a friend, and that friend actually just wants to be there and to work with you and help you be present. But when we push those emotions away, we're in some sense pushing a part of ourselves away. So I find it's very powerful when we recognize and become, what I like to say, radically authentic in what we're feeling. So that way we can begin to have the awareness of what we're actually feeling, as opposed to kind of feel like, I don't really know what I'm feeling. I'm feeling something and it's coming out as rage or anger, but when it could really be just something that needs a little bit of attention, a little bit of love at some point. So I think that's a very wonderful talking point in last week's episode.
Absolutely. So I know, Ashton, you just joined us. Thank you for joining us. What we were saying is, on our last episode, we were talking about healing trauma, and one of the things that the speakers kind of came up with was being, authentic in the present moment, and being authentic and present within yourself is really powerful to moving forward. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Can you unmute yourself?
There you go. Thanks for having me on. Going off what you said, I think presence alone, just being in the moment, being in your body, using your breath to access your own being, can really like open the doorway to sifting through your own emotions in a way that's healthy. Because I think so much we're stuck in our head and we're thinking our way through our emotions, and it kind of reminds me of like a baby. As a child, our emotions run through us instantaneously, and there's no resistance to that emotion. You'll see a baby crying and just a few minutes later laughing and smiling. And I think, we learn as adolescents to shove those feelings down and to either, force our way through them, think our way through them, like they say, like, just man up, dude. But that starts a pattern and a trend that leads to just shoving down, obviously, our feelings, but it can lead to distorted actions. Like, an example is like a Catholic priest. It's like we shove down our own sexuality, and then we see things like pedophilia and stuff.
You're leaving off on yeah, that's a really big thing that we'll have to definitely do an episode on, because that's pretty messed up. But so we're talking about in today's episode, in episode number 3, we're talking about unmanaged energy. So I'll give a little thing on energy, and then we'll kind of get everybody's perspective on that and how that kind of relates to trauma. So I believe that most of us listening, most of us talking today and participating, understand that energy is really everything. It's matter, it's atoms, it's our emotions, it's the wind, it's all these things. And even Einstein said everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. This is not philosophy. So for today's episode, we'll give energy kind of a context because it is so vast. And I believe in this unmanaged way with healing trauma, it could be energy, could be our thoughts, it could be our beliefs, it could be the things that we focus on, our time and effort. And I'll be the first to admit that I have a lot of trauma with my time and with my effort, and I believe that's because when I was a child, I didn't get the attention that I hoped to get with my parents, because they were all wrapped up in their own drama and their own trauma that I was not witnessed, and it kind of made me give up on that. So that's something that I'm healing with, and I'm working with. But there's so many things that it could be for so many different people, and that's why we're coming together here in the circle as meant to kind of acknowledge all of this. So kind of opening up the floor and handing over the mic to whoever would like to go next is, this unmanaged energy. What are some experiences that you all have with unmanaged energy, or maybe what are your thoughts on this? Whoever would like to go ahead.
Yeah, if I may take the floor, that's cool. So mismanaged energy is quite a, for a lot of us, it's an everyday experience. I believe all of us have a sort of ideal reality that we want to see ourselves in experiencing. And I'm finding that the main obstacle to achieve that reality is where we put our energy, and energy being literally the thoughts that we have, the emotions that we feel, all the inward things, the inner dialogue that we have. And it comes to a place where it's even like to a level of how we communicate with ourselves. Even having a thought of, like, I was just saying this in my master class that I just had the other day, that, when we have a thought about ourselves, and if that thought is harmful, such as in the way like saying, I can't do this. I can't believe that. That is actually taking your energy and putting it into a place that is not serving you and not producing and regenerating your internal climate. And just as CeeLo said right there, a lot of it comes from a place of childhood, and a lot of it is like inherited belief systems that we have, sort of indoctrinated ourselves because it worked at some point, So say at one moment, say for CeeLo, like in order for you to like move on with your life and to keep going in the moment, you had to develop these mechanisms in order to like get through the moment, and in some way that tells the subconscious mind that it worked. And the thing is, though, is that the brain cannot discern between like what is actually good and what is wrong for us, so the brain will actually inherit that idea and repeat that because it worked. But, that creates within our autonomic mind, our autonomic response system that like, okay, that worked. And so it takes all that like, limitless potential that can happen, and then it like moves it into a place of like, a cyclical loop, until we bring awareness and love and like all the tools to be able to look at that and begin to actually like realign or rewrite or recognize in some way, recognize or recognize, our brain to be in a state of like producing, to like align those energy centers so they're like reticulating, as opposed to like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve this. And light's coming down, and all the things the such, so it's like it becomes everything, just as you said, CeeLo, to become mindful of where our energy is going, because kind of like just as Ashton said, it, from that place we make actions then, and then once we make actions, we can't really go back once we make that action. And so it's it's really important to become so like microscopic on seeing like where that like misalignment or that like leak in the dam, so to speak, is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that comes from childhood as well, and I think we're gonna have at least a few episodes on just childhood and parental figures. Anybody else have something that they would like to add to all that?
Well, I think as kind of a general rule, what I found with energy is that regardless of how it gets deployed in our lives, it follows where our consciousness goes. So I heard a speaker a number of years ago who basically summarized as saying that energy goes where consciousness flows. And as long as we remember that, we have kind of a guiding principle to determine how to work through not just the trauma, but also our successes as well. Keeping that in mind is sort of a template for how we approach the things that we do in our lives. I know that sometimes it may be difficult to kind of work through that because we end up realizing that we're sending our energy into places where it's really not serving us, as Joe was mentioning. And that can be counterproductive in the long run. However, it's also important to recognize that it can give us a good, swift kick in the butt when we need it as well. For example, just drawing from my own experience, when I was a kid, I was bullied and belittled and all that kind of stuff frequently. Treated often to be as like the little screw up. Well, that actually, as difficult as it was to endure, I kind of unconsciously took it and turned it into a positive, a tool that I could use for myself. It forced me to become kind of an overachiever in some ways. It was my way of kind of getting back at the criticism, saying, "Oh yeah, well I'll show you," And as difficult as that might be to deal with, and as kind of somewhat negative as that approach might be, it motivated me. And it's as long as it works to your benefit and you can make use of it going forward in your life, it can be a good thing, even though it might not seem that way at the time when it's unfolding. Of course, it can also work the other way too. And as I said, I had become something of an overachiever to the point where I sometimes put things on the back burner that I shouldn't have been doing because I was so fixated on the idea of, I got to keep showing them. I got to keep proving to them that I'm not what they said I was. Mm-hmm. So in the end, that ends up pushing you to learn to strike a balance and to see when something can be potentially both a positive and a negative at the same time, depending upon how you employ it in the way you do your life. An example I can think of too would be something like, say, nuclear power. When it's used for generating energy, it can be seen as a good thing, but when it's used for warfare, obviously it's not. So if you use your own energy in kind of a comparable way, you might find that you get both a benefit or potentially a drawback from the same thing. What governs that then is what your beliefs and what your consciousness are doing. So it's important, I think, in managing your energy to learn exactly where you stand with yourself in those particular areas, because they'll help to shape the direction that the energy takes and the direction in which it flows. Again, energy goes where consciousness flows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you see it a lot in movies when, like you're saying, that criticism motivated you to start to achieve a lot. And I know a lot of athletes, I hear a lot of stories of athletes who get this haterade and then they start, working themselves really intensely because they're like trying to, shut down the haters. And, I kind of wonder how many of today's legends would have been legends had they not had that external forces to push
that's
them.
very true. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Ashton, do you have any thoughts on this topic so far?
Yeah, I love all the points so far so much. For me, what's coming up is like, how can we learn to unpack our own trauma? And so much of our own trauma comes from our childhood, our adolescence, and how can we engage our mind, body, spirit to like process these emotions in a healthy way? Because I resonate with what you guys are saying too about the like, some people have treated me bad, thought of me as lesser than, as unworthy, told me I can't do it. And that, like lit a fire in me to pursue my dreams even harder. And, I feel that all the time, but like, how can we find that balance, like you're saying as well? And what I think, like our habits, it's from the micro to the macro, like our daily habits, what we eat, what we drink, what we read, how much screen time you have, how much nature time you have, all like compiles into how you manage your trauma and energy and how you can release. Especially I think with nature, I found I like naturally release emotions. And I think emotions are really like energy in motion. It's like this ethereal thing that we all experience, but if you don't know how to process your own emotions, almost like a computer, if you don't know how to, like, what was that thing on PC computers where it like takes all the files and makes them, like cleans them up and like makes them get smaller and all that stuff. If we don't know how to process our own emotions, it manifests physically, and our emotions are going to manifest physically. They are manifesting physically all the time. I feel like our experience is a reflection of our state of being, right? And so much of that is our emotions. And I think it's not always like, in today's world, it's like impossible to get away from all trauma. And there's like systematic like oppression too. And so we have to learn how to do our own processing. And I think, for me, meditation, nature time, music, having an outlet. But I think diet is more important than we even know.
Yes. So I want to ask if there are any stories anybody has of maybe a time in their life where their energy was unmanaged, and what triggered you to come back into balance and begin to manage that energy better. Does anybody have any stories like that to share, Joe?
Yeah. So this one's a pretty personal one because this is one that really aligns with our subject matter. And so when I was around the age of 18, I was in a place of being where I, sought outside myself for energy that I knew was inside myself, if that makes sense. I guess I would look and strive so hard to get attention or validation or something, I guess more so just attention from the world around me, that I actually began so much so to develop an eating disorder. Actually developed bulimia nervosa, where I made it like a daily ritual that in order for people to like me, because I didn't like my body at the time, in order for people to like me, I had to look a certain way. I had to, fit this sort of mold that I thought of what a person should be and should look like at my age, 18-year-old ripped and super studly and just like that. But, I was a little pudgier and little things like that. So I made it a habit where, in order for me to feel good, I had to be empty, so it was like a mismanaging of my emotional energy because first, if it's harming you in any certain way or anything like that, it's not good. If you are in pain and it is causing you direct physical harm, then, that's sort of where it becomes pain on an emotional level is it's one of the only ways to really learn from things, because I learned so much from the experience. It's just when it becomes a point where the body is literally being harmed from it, it's, that's kind of when the switch has to happen. And for me, what it was, I was, performing my little daily ritual at the side of my shed. And so I had this one time where I was just it just hurt and did not feel good. My throat was on fire. My belly was just queasy. And I just looked and I was all sweaty and just okay, all right, this is not good. This is not the way to handle this. And so it was this very visceral. It was this very visceral, okay, this is what you have to do differently to heal yourself, because what you're doing right now is not healing you at all and is actually harming you. So that's actually from that experience, that's what kind of set me up about to, on the path to discovery, of who I am, what I'm about, what do I, what does self-love look like? What does it look like to feel at home in my body as opposed to want to escape it? And so, yeah, that's how, I had this mismanagement of my energy because I saw it outside myself for validation, and how I had that switch where, the only place I can get that is from within. No one else could give me that. Mm-hmm. So I had to really go within and look and find and go on the journey to discover what that is. Mm-hmm. And what that means.
Were there any specific kind of meditations or journal topics or anything similar to that helped you?
I'd say the most beneficial thing for me was actually, so I would write some things about, what do I like about myself? What's my ideal version of myself that I like to look at? But the most powerful thing that I found was actually looking in the mirror and just staring at myself in the mirror for about an hour and consistently of okay, do you really believe about this self? Do you look at yourself right now, look in your eyes, look into your inner child, look into you, and how, for me, it was how could I hate this thing? How could I hate this thing that's in pain? and so it's like more like, I guess, like a mirror meditation, really looking into my own eyes in the mirror and like saying to myself, like, what I needed to hear, and like, to really, I guess, develop that compassion for myself in a way, and to give myself a break.
Yes. I know that mirror meditations are so powerful. I had a mirror meditation that gave me my first Kundalini awakening. Yeah, so anybody interested in mirror meditations, definitely check that out. And what a powerful story. I'm so glad that you're able to share it, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, real quick, one time I heard this, it's like an ancient Zen master. I can't remember his name, but he said, it's not that ancient because it's like mirrors existed, but he said, staring in the mirror will literally double your power.
Yeah, for sure. I can attest to that after that. Whoa, that's dark.
That's beautiful. I like that a lot. Okay, so thank you for sharing. Brent, did you have a story you want to share?
Well, yeah, one thing that I found actually kind of works wonders for having things change for you is having your life fall apart. And that happened to me when I was in my early to mid 30s. I experienced a number of difficulties right in a row. For example, the only people in my family who I was really close to were both of my parents, and they both died within 18 months of one another. Not long after that, the house that I was or the condo that I was living in was a wonderful place, and it was sold out from under me. So I had to move on very short notice. At the time, I was in a partnership with someone going on 5 years that ended. And then I was also in a job that I really liked, that I had been in for 13 years, and I got laid off. So it was like whammy after whammy after whammy. And there's only so much of that you can take before you reach kind of a breaking point. And I had to take a very hard look at myself and say, I had everything that I thought I was supposed to want out of life. Why did it all go away? And one of the things I came to realize during the downtime I had in the wake of all that, because I was out of work for almost 2 years, was my sense of self, my spiritual self, was essentially completely absent. And it was a time for me to start taking a closer look at that. It was something I resisted because in the religious tradition I was brought up in, it was more the same thing that I talked about earlier in terms of the idea of bullying and belittling and criticism, and I just rejected it outright pretty much as a youth and didn't replace it with anything. Well, now I was in a position where I had to do something to get my life turned around and reinvent myself. So I said, well, I've always had something of a passing interest in things of a metaphysical and spiritualist nature. Maybe now is the time to start taking a look at them, which I did. And that was the key that I needed to essentially reallocate my energy and heal the trauma that the previous experiences had caused. This gave me an opportunity to essentially do a 180 in my life in a very short period. Things got back on track very quickly because I had to come to realize that, this was my time to explore what I needed to do to heal myself, to get myself set on a new direction for the future. And it worked. It was great. But the one thing that I found since then, I think it's important to remember for anybody who goes through a process like this, is that they also need to understand that it's not a one-off and you're done. It's ongoing. It's essentially a case where the testing and the examination and the introspection is going to be ongoing from that point forward. And I think that's something that people really need to bear in mind, because a lot of times they tend to treat it as a one-off and think, well, I've done my work, it's done. I don't need to do anything more. And then they suffer another disappointment or another trauma, and they're like, well, I thought I did that already. Well, no. You do need to realize that this is going to be an ongoing process. And by doing that, I think if you recognize that, it puts you in a mindset that realizes that this is important for your continuing personal growth. And that's really important, not only for dealing with trauma, but just for making accomplishments in your life, becoming creatively fulfilled, finding suitable relationships, all those kinds of things. So when somebody experiences a hard fall and realizes that it seems like your life is over, it's not. It's basically just trying to get you nudged onto a new path. You may not have recognized it. Life may have been trying to do that to you before that point, but if you didn't pay attention to it, now your consciousness is essentially going to say to yourself, by hook or by crook, you are going to pay attention this time. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, again, you have the opportunity to rewrite things and set yourself on a new path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when you acknowledge it, it doesn't force, whatever energy and motion to continue to, kick us in the butt. Sometimes we can see it coming and we can kind of take it with grace. So I appreciate your story. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I think in many ways also it's kind of really sort of an explanation for the so-called midlife crisis that most people go through. And it can be particularly difficult for men. Their life has gone along a certain way many times up to a certain point, and all of a sudden it goes through a radical change and they're left shaking their head going, what's going on here? Why did this happen? Why me? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's something to use as a tool to be prepared for the second act. And, the second act, and I've found at least, can be just as satisfying, if not more so than the first one was. But you have to leave yourself open to it and take advantage of it.
I love it. I know, Joe, you have to go. Did you want to say any last sayings or share any plugs?
Yeah, so I would just keep getting dark here. So yes, I have to go, and it was a pleasure. CeeLo, thank you so much for having me on to share with you and have this time. And thank you, Ashton and Greg, to just be here and everything. So yeah, just to say, I am also a men's coach, and it's called Living Magnificent Coaching. And so we actually go into a lot of our subject matter here, and we develop these tools and we develop these things to live magnificent and to sort of overcome these things about ourselves to truly live a truly magnificent life. And I just released a free masterclass called Clarified Confidence. So reach out to me, send me a DM if you're interested in that, and I'll send you a link. And may you all have a beautiful night and all the wonderful prayers and blessings to you.
Is your tag Living Magnificently?
Magnificent.
Okay. Yeah. Is that all one word on like Instagram?
Yes. Yes. So Living Magnificent on Instagram, and then my Facebook is Joseph Anthony Marlowe.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a really great night and appreciate all your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me. I'll see you guys soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Cool. All right. So, Brent, did you get everything else that you wanted to say out? And then we'll move on and go to Ashton.
Basically, yeah. I mean, one of the things I think that's important to remember is that a lot of what we've talked about essentially relates to subject areas that I work with quite a bit, and that's conscious creation or the law of attraction. And they can be used, again, as I said at the beginning, not just for healing trauma, but also for doing whatever it is that you want to create in your life, learning how to, again, apply the principle of energy goes where consciousness flows. These are materials I talk about quite a bit in my blogs and books at brentmarchant.com. You find all kinds of good stuff there. A lot of it's free. So help yourself and put it to use and have a great life.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Ashton, what would you like to say now?
Yeah, all of that was beautiful, and it kind of gives me like a starting point. I feel like as humans, we, especially in this very materialistic culture, we derive our identity, our sense of self from the things and the people we have in our life, right? What we do, what we own, our job, and friends and family. And when we lose all of it, and I think a lot of people right now are going through this process, men and women, but also like financially, you know, it's like as a country, we're kind of feeling that. And for me, what really helped was learning to identify more with my spirit and with my soul and with my consciousness, or just like myself, in my own feelings, and not deriving everything from the outside. And that kind of like starts my story, because I was going to bring up like I've had this issue in the past with having like low self-worth, and then like ignoring red flags, and like allowing people in my life who don't respect me, in friends and in romantic partnerships. But that was a big, long process of self-reflection that I eventually came into, where I started to see more so like my feelings have value, and I am worthy of being in like reciprocal relationships. Um, Especially coming out of like high school and college, like, you know, your friend group is like the kids that are in your town. And when I started traveling, I started to experience people like, they're like, wow, you're so nice and cool, and like you have value and you do cool things. And I'm like, whoa, really? Like, I just never thought of myself like that. So getting into spirituality and just even philosophy and metaphysics really helped me derive my sense of self from more of a formless place, more of like the universe created me for a reason. I'm worthy, and because of that, solely exclusively, like my feelings matter, my intention is powerful, and like my life has meaning. And yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process, I think, for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think enlightenment is so much more of a journey than a destination. Or like the other day I was thinking enlightenment's like the starting point. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'm a infinite vast being, but it's like, well, how can you integrate that into the physical world, and how can we develop like the discipline to treat ourselves well and healthy, and how can we like get into more of a groove with who we really are, which you know, everyone is so unique and special, and everyone's so talented and creative. And I think our culture kind of like breeds sameness, but everyone is like, diversity, I think, is like the most beautiful thing. So
Mm-hmm.
how can we tap into our own feelings? And again, like meditation and daily habits really help you cultivate, like, I feel like there has to be a switch from like thinking into feeling and listening. Like, how can we listen to our own body, our own emotions, our friends? You know, sometimes like people are like trying to give us help, and we like, oh, we're good, like I don't need an outlet, like I'll just keep toughing my way out, especially as men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah.
I definitely think that's a big one for all of us. And you know, there's there's no need, because people feel good from helping us, and I think help, like realizing that people actually feel good when they help you, and you're grateful and you show gratitude to them, then it's like a beneficial mutual experience.
Truly. And I feel like as I get older, I realize like our experience is a collective experience. Like you're not just living on the planet alone. And I feel like we're meant to have community where we're much more interdependent beings rather than independent beings. I've been reading like a little bit of like Native American philosophy, and they talk about how like trees and nature are like dependent on the air, and like a tree is like rooted to the earth. And I think that's how we are. We're here for a reason. We have limitations for a reason. And the more we can like humble ourselves and accept help, like let help in. I once read this book called The Art of Receiving, and it really opened my eyes how I was just like trying to force my way through life by just doing it all myself. And I'm very independent, so it's like natural, but it's a learning process.
Yes, we're all learning how to manage our energy better. And I think the big thing is that we, have kindness and compassion for ourselves and for others, and hold space for ourselves to experience what we are, and then to find these techniques and these tools that helps each of us, because like we've all said here, we all are on our own journeys and have our own experiences. So important that you find who you are. And going back to the very beginning of this episode, just being authentic, and that is a huge thing. So I guess we'll kind of wrap it up here and give each one a final say on anything you'd like to add, and especially include your links so people can find you.
Well, I guess I would say, building on what we talked about in the previous episode, learn to know yourself, and then based on what we've talked about here, learn to know what to do with it. And that's important for essentially any kind of undertaking that we look at. Again, something from my perspective that's important is learning to work with the principles of law of attraction, where conscious creation can work wonders in that regard. I strongly recommend any of the books by Jane Roberts and the Seth material. They're very comprehensive in terms of the material that they get into. And if you're looking for examples of those ideas at work, the books on my website provide examples of films that illustrate the principles, so that people can see how they get put to use on a practical daily living kind of level. And just as again, to give you the link, it's brentmarchant.com, and on the books page there are links to downloadable free excerpts from each of my books. So you get like 3 chapters, and you'll see a lot of material that way. So and of course there's my ongoing blog as well. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Shameless on my part.
Yeah, get it out there. That's what I want. And I love your writing style and how entertaining it is. It's kind of like watching a movie in my brain. So I appreciate that.
And then of course there's always the CinemaScribe segments on Bring Me to Life Radio, which appear twice a month.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brent, for all your time.
My pleasure.
All right, Ashton.
First one is I love Jane Roberts. Her books have really helped me a lot too. So I think that's really cool. As we close this, I'm like thinking, what are the habits that can really help men process our trauma? And for me, it's meditation, nature walks, having a creative outlet. Like there's been so many times in my life where I've had crisis happen, and I was able to turn to music creation that literally helped me process those emotions when like a family member death. Like I saw my family not have outlets when I did, and I felt bad. I'm like, wow, I am lucky to have this outlet that it's a song I never even released, but art and which can be such a vast term, you know, like writing, music, drawing, painting, dance. So much is art, but how can we find that outlet to help us process? And again, diet and stuff really helps. But I think like things like this, talking to each other and seeking information, like better yourself, like have courage to better yourself and have the discipline to like seek out, you know, a book or a movie. And I heard this saying recently, I'm trying to remember what it was like something like discipline. Discipline is not supposed to be like this hard thing. It's what helps us cultivate happiness and what helps us live like a healthy life. And our culture is very undisciplined in like our health habits. And I mean, I think all of us had, maybe not everyone, but I think all of us have gone up and down with our habits since the pandemic has started.
Oh yeah.
I know I've been going up and down, and I'm like, just like, okay, I'm getting slightly used to this. And to be very frank, I feel like the pandemic is helping us go inward. And I know so many people are like it showed me the massive lack of patience and like self, like inwardness, because everyone externalizes everything. Everyone like needs partying and you know, to be able to go to whatever out and about, and like I need it too. And it's actually helped show me like my love for humanity and like to appreciate it more. But it's also helped me go inward. You know, it's like you have to keep 6 feet of space from everyone. You're just relying on your own auric field. Like it's really hard for people to vamp off you during this time. Maybe they can only turn to online, but like if you learn your own boundaries, I think by listening and meditation, yoga, stuff like that, like how are you letting your energy leak, and how can you cultivate like a more healthy sense of energy cultivation? I don't know how to say exactly, like how can you use your habits to expand your energy in a healthier way and with like more proper boundaries. For me, I mean, not everyone's different. Like that's more for me. Like I have poor boundaries because I'm like overly nice, or like I shove my feelings down for other people. I don't know if it's like my Libra stuff inside, but yeah, I think all of that really can help a lot of men. And sorry, I got a little ranty, but I'm Ashton Robertson, and I make music under the name Spaceship Earth, as well as Clouds. Spaceship Earth is psychedelic electronic music with electric guitar, live electric guitar, and Clouds with a Z is ambient soundscapes, all in alternate tunings like 432 hertz. That's designed for healing and processing emotion, really. But I like to think of it as like interesting sound healing music. That's not that sound healing music's boring, but I give it a little spice and flavor.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I love it. And you know, I've listened to a lot of Clouds music, and we've collabed together and stuff, and just love your meditation music. Everybody,
Thank you.
Check it out. Check out Brent's book. Check out Joe Marlowe. All really beautiful dudes. And you know, to all the dudes listening, to all the dudes watching, to anybody else who, you know, may not align with that word, to all the women, to everybody who doesn't claim a gender, I just want to send so much love and appreciation to all of you for tuning in. And if you have anything you'd like to say, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you think. And just hope everyone has a great day. Namaste.